Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, if you've ever, dipped your toe into Psychology 101, you've heard the name Maslow.
Oh, yeah. Abraham Maslow. Hard to miss him.
Exactly. And his hierarchy of needs, right, that classic pyramid model of motivation, it's usually presented as this neat, reliable structure.
Very neat. Step by step.
But today, we're not just going to rehash the standard stuff. We're actually digging into some really fascinating research that, well, it kind of re-examines that whole pyramid.
It does, and specifically through the lens of creative drive, pure creative drive.
So our mission here for this deep dive, it's really centered on this idea called the inverted pyramid of creative needs.
That's the core concept we've been looking at.
Yeah.
And the research basically asks this fundamental question.
Hmm.
Why is it that for some people, the really committed artists, writers, innovators, the drive to create seems to just completely flip the script?
Flip the established rules of human needs, yeah. Like pushing that self-expression right to the front of the line.
Exactly. Making it priority number one, even when other things seem lacking.
It's a really compelling idea, this anomaly. But maybe before we dive too deep into the inversion, we should quickly remind ourselves, and you listening, about the classic structure Maslow originally laid out.
Good idea, just to set the stage. So the original pyramid, it's all about a very rigorous step-by-step climb. You start at the bottom.
Right, the absolute foundation, can't ignore it.
Absolutely. That base layer is physiological. We're talking food, water, shelter, rest, the bare essentials for survival.
And only once those are reasonably met, then you can move up.
Then you move up to safety and security. So that's like physical safety, but also financial stability, health, that sort of thing. Feeling secure in the world.
Okay, base layer solid, safety layer solid. Then what?
Then you get into the social stuff. Belongingness and love needs, community, relationships, friendships, intimacy, feeling connected.
Makes sense. We're social creatures.
We are. And after that comes esteem needs. This is about feeling competent, achieving things, getting respect from others, self-respect.
Right. So physiological, safety, belonging, esteem. That's quite a climb already.
It is. And according to the classic model, only when all that groundwork is satisfied and stable, then you finally reach the summit.
The very peak of the pyramid.
Which is self-actualization.
Uh-huh.
And that's the realm where creativity, problem-solving, morality, achieving your full potential, all that good stuff is supposed to live.
So in that classic view, creativity is almost treated like a luxury item, isn't it? Something you can only really afford or access once everything else is totally secure.
It's pretty much the standard interpretation, yeah. It's the ultimate goal, but accessible only from that position of, well, comfort and security.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this new premise then. Why is that classic structure where creativity is kind of put on this pedestal, this luxury status at the peak, why might that be, well, just inaccurate when we look at actual creative lives?
Well, the source material we looked at suggests that neat step-by-step climb, it just doesn't always match reality.
Yeah.
Especially for certain kinds of people.
How so? What's the observation?
The observation is pretty stark, actually. If you really look at the biographies, the lives of these incredibly driven creative minds, they often show the exact opposite pattern, the reverse.
The reverse?
Meaning they are absolutely compelled to create, to make their art, to write whatever it is, even when they're experiencing really profound insecurity.
Like material insecurity.
Yeah, like being literally starving.
Yep.
Or deeply lonely, lacking that belonging piece, or physically ill, or even living in dangerous, unsafe conditions.
Wow. So their commitment to creating seems to just override those fundamental needs for safety, comfort, even connection sometimes.
It appears to, yeah. It really challenges that need hierarchy where base needs must come first.
So the argument the researchers are making, it sounds pretty powerful. It's like, for these individuals, the drive to make something, it isn't some optional goal or, a luxury item they pick up once the rent's paid.
Not at all. It's framed much more like a psychological necessity. Like, it's actually a core way they cope with existence itself.
Right.
Survival, almost.
Survival. Okay. That word really hits differently here.
It does. And that sense of necessity, that's what defines the inversion. It's not just, oh, I prefer to paint today. It's that the creative act itself becomes about making sense of a world that feels chaotic or threatening.
So when basic safety or belonging isn't met externally?
Exactly. The act of creating order on a canvas or structure in a story or harmony in music, that becomes a form of internal survival, building your own stability from the inside out.
So the practical upshot of this inverted view, pretty radical then. Creativity comes first.
Pretty much. And that stability, the safety, the belonging, they're almost presented as, well, maybe not optional, but certainly not strict prerequisites in the way the classic model
The
suggests.
art just has to be made, regardless of whether the creator had breakfast.
That seems to be the drive. And the research grounds us in some really concrete examples, which helps make it less abstract.
Yeah, examples are good. Like who?
Well, the quintessential case, you always hear about him. Van Gogh.
Right? Of course.
Think about it. Painting relentlessly, producing masterpieces, while battling profound poverty, serious mental health issues, lacking consistent social connection. Just instability defined his life in many ways.
He definitely didn't wait until he was financially secure or, feeling socially fulfilled to create Starry Night.
Absolutely not. He didn't wait for comfort to produce work that literally changed art history. You just can't look at his life and say, ah, yes, he clearly satisfied his safety and belonging needs first and then achieved self-actualization through painting.
It seems like the painting was the one constant, the one anchor in a sea of instability.
That's a great way to put it. The art itself seems to have been the stabilizing force, not the result of stability.
Okay, Van Gogh is maybe the classic starving artist trope, but are there other examples? More contemporary, maybe?
Oh, definitely. Think about musicians. How many write their most powerful, heart-wrenching songs right in the middle of intense heartbreak or battling addiction?
Yeah, that's true. Breakup albums are a whole genre.
Exactly. Or consider artists creating entire bodies of work while they're in, say, rehab facilities.
Mm.
Their basic physical needs might be met, sure, but their freedom, their belonging, their esteem are arguably pretty compromised in that setting.
Yet the creativity flows, sometimes even more intensely.
Right. The intensity of their best, most essential work often seems directly linked to times of, well, deprivation or struggle, not comfort.
It's this idea, almost counterintuitive, that maybe high creative output sometimes requires low input, at least in terms of external security and comfort. That's the inversion right there.
That's the core of it.
Okay, but this raises a big question for me. If Maslow's pyramid is so foundational, like taught everywhere, are these researchers just saying, okay, Maslow is wrong, tear it down? Or is there maybe a way to reconcile this, to fit this inverted drive back into the bigger picture somehow?
That's actually where the analysis gets really interesting and nuanced. The source material we looked at, it points out that this inversion, it isn't just some modern critique trying to debunk Maslow.
Mm.
Apparently, Maslow himself, later in his career, started to realize his original pyramid wasn't quite the whole story.
Yeah.
That it wasn't entirely fixed and, strictly linear for everyone.
Wait, really? Maslow himself admitted it wasn't always step by step, because that's not usually how it's taught.
Yeah, the popular version is very rigid, I agree. But in his later writings, he started exploring concepts that added a lot more flexibility, especially towards the top of the pyramid.
Okay, now this gets really interesting. What kind of flexibility, what concepts are we talking about?
He introduced ideas like peak experiences and even beyond that, something called self-transcendence.
Peak experiences and self-transcendence.
And
Yeah.
these were important adjustments because he recognized that self-actualization maybe wasn't just a final static destination you arrive at and stay.
Mhm.
He saw these momentary experiences,
Mm.
powerful moments that could satisfy those higher needs, kind of irrespective of what was happening lower down the pyramid at that exact moment.
Mm. Okay, for those of us maybe less familiar, can you quickly break down what those concepts mean, especially thinking about creativity? Peak experiences first.
Sure. A peak experience, as Maslow described it, is like a transient moment of intense joy, fulfillment, unity, or deep meaning. It's that feeling of being fully alive, totally absorbed, maybe even feeling connected to something larger than yourself.
Okay, I can see how that relates to creativity, like being completely in the zone, in flow.
Exactly. For an artist, a writer, a musician, that moment of intense focus where the work is just pouring out, everything clicks, time disappears, that could definitely be described as a peak experience. It feels incredibly fulfilling.
Right. And the other one, self-transcendence. That sounds even higher.
It is in his later thinking. Self-transcendence is about moving beyond your own personal concerns, beyond self-actualization even, towards something greater. It involves dedicating yourself to a cause, to helping others, to seeking a higher truth, or maybe pursuing mystical or spiritual experiences.
Okay, and how does that connect to the creative drive?
Well, think about artists who feel their work serves a purpose beyond just their own expression. Art for social change. Art that explores deep human truths. Art as a way to connect with others on a profound level. That commitment could be seen as a form of self-transcendence. It's about the meaning in the work, not just the act of making it.
Okay, I think I'm getting it. So connecting these dots. Maslow's later ideas hint that maybe creativity and the meaning you find in it, maybe they can actively fuel those other needs, like belonging or esteem, instead of just waiting for them to be filled first.
Precisely. That's the implication. If you view the act of creating, especially when it leads to a peak experience or feels like an act of self-transcendence, it grants this deep psychological fulfillment.
Fulfillment that's usually reserved for the very top of that classic pyramid.
Exactly. But you're getting it now through the act itself, regardless of whether your bank account is empty or you're feeling lonely.
And that could explain the anomaly we started with, right? The creative survival drive.
It provides a mechanism. The artist is maybe experiencing the intense fulfillment of the peak while simultaneously living with the lack at the base. The creative act provides something essential that the external world isn't.
Wow. Okay, so if the structure isn't exactly the opposite, like it's not a perfect upside down triangle where safety is just totally ignored,
Right, it's probably not that simple.
then how should we think about this relationship for, a really driven creative person? The research you mentioned suggested something else.
Yeah, the term that came up, and I think it's a really useful way to visualize it, is a loop. The pyramid, for these individuals, functions more like a dynamic loop.
A loop. Okay, explain that. How does the loop work here?
Well, instead of a one-way climb, think of it as a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The creative person has this intense, almost non-negotiable need to express themselves, right? That's the starting
Okay,
goal.
the drive itself kicks it off.
Yeah. And the act of creating, it doesn't wait politely for belonging or esteem to show up. It actually starts the process of generating those feelings, often internally first.
Whoa, okay, hold on. We need to really dissect that mechanism. How does painting a picture or writing a poem actually generate something like belonging or even psychological safety? Those seem like external things usually.
Well, let's take psychological safety. Often that's about feeling a sense of predictability, control, order in your environment, right?
Yeah, generally, knowing what to expect.
Okay, so imagine your external world, your finances, maybe your relationships, your health, feels totally chaotic and unpredictable.
Yeah.
Where can you find control?
Uh, I guess in something you can control.
Exactly. The canvas, the blank page, the musical score. That becomes a contained world where the creator is essentially sovereign. They make the rules. They control the outcome. They decide the meaning.
Okay, so that act of imposing order onto the chaos, even if it's just artistic chaos, it provides a substitute for the external safety that's missing.
It creates an internal controlled environment, a sanctuary, like you said earlier, built out of the work itself.
Yeah.
That can feel incredibly safe, psychologically speaking.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense for safety. But what about belonging and esteem? Those feel even more social, usually needing other people.
They often are, but creation can fulfill them internally, too, in a couple of ways. For belonging, think about it. By dedicating yourself to your craft, you implicitly join a lineage, right?
As like the community of all artists, past and present.
Yeah, you belong to the work. You're part of that tradition, even if you're working completely alone in a room. There's a connection there.
An internal sense of community. Okay.
And maybe more immediately, the creative act provides internal esteem. It's undeniable proof of your own competence, your own agency.
How so?
Think, okay, I might not have X, Y, or Z in my life right now, but look, I finished this chapter. I mastered this difficult technique. I made this thing exist. That feeling of accomplishment, of skill, that's esteem.
And it comes directly from the work, not necessarily from external praise, which might be unreliable anyway if you're struggling.
Precisely. It's internal validation. And it bypasses the need for the external kind, at least partially.
So it becomes this kind of self-sustaining internal cycle. It runs almost in reverse of the classic model, which looks outwards for fulfillment first.
Exactly. The process can start at the top with that urgent need for creative expression, for meaning, for peak experience.
And that drive, that act, it sort of trickles down to help stabilize the person emotionally and mentally. It shores up their sense of safety, belonging, and esteem from the inside.
Even if their external circumstances, their physical situation, remains really tough. The art creates a kind of internal stability that allows them to endure the external instability.
It's the art making the person resilient, not the resilience allowing the art.
That seems to be the core idea of this loop model. And that emotional stability generated by the work itself then allows the creator to keep going, to withstand further hardships.
Because their essential identity, their core sense of purpose, is being constantly fed and reinforced by the very act of creating.
Exactly. The work keeps them whole in a fundamental way.
Okay, this is This is a really significant shift in perspective from the standard pyramid we all learned. So, just to wrap our heads around the biggest insight here, the key takeaway from this research seems to be
Well, I think it's that for certain highly driven individuals, creativity isn't the cherry on top. It's not the eventual comfortable product of having all your ducks in a row, having security and stability.
right.
Instead, it might actually be the necessary, urgent source of that psychological security and stability, the engine, not the caboose.
The engine, I like that.
And this really raises an important question, doesn't it? If this motivation to create is actually more like a fundamental psychological survival instinct for some,
A way to navigate hardship and chaos internally?
yeah, does that deep, maybe non-optional drive, does it help us better understand why some creatives persist, why they keep going despite overwhelming obstacles, material hardship, public criticism, years and years of neglect? Maybe.
Because stopping isn't really an option. The drive isn't a choice. It's fundamental to their coping mechanism, to their mental structure.
It could be. It reframes their persistence not just as stubbornness, but as necessity.
It absolutely changes how we might view the struggles that creators endure. So, maybe a final thought for you listening. If you recognize any of this in yourself, this inverted drive,
No.
that urgent, sometimes inconvenient, non-negotiable need to make things, regardless of the circumstances.
Regardless of whether it seems sensible from the outside.
Yeah, maybe consider this. What essential, perhaps lower level human needs, like that sense of safety or belonging or competence, esteem, what needs are you perhaps unknowingly fulfilling for yourself every single time you sit down and engage in your most meaningful creative work?
Because the answer, as maybe Maslow himself eventually started to see, might just be that your art. It's actually your most critical form of psychological self-preservation.
A profound thought to end on. Thanks for exploring that with us.